Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Chu, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the importance of insourcing in reducing the federal government's expensive and risky over-reliance on service contractors. For the uninitiated, there's no better reminder of how insourcing can be used to save money and improve services than the retirement and annuity work at the Defense Finance and Accounting Service, or DFAS. In 2001, the work was privatized. In 2003, the DoD Inspector General determined that the decision to contract out had been wrong and reported that a systematic flaw biased the A-76 process against the in-house workforce and raised serious questions about the integrity of all A-76 cost comparisons. Despite growing concerns over the contractor's poor performance, including reports that thousands of military retirees with disabilities died before they received their benefits, DFAS did not actually decide to insource the work until 2010. DFAS's decision to insource 600 jobs saved money and improved services because, according to the agency, federal employees were more flexible, were better able to change the way they worked, and to accommodate increases in demand. In 2011, DFAS told the House Defense Appropriations Subcommittee that this insourcing would save $5 to $10 million this year and $19 million in the next fiscal year. As DoD reported in December 2010 regarding its overall insourcing, and I quote, "Execution to date has been highly successful. More than half of current insourcing actions are because the contracted work was determined to be inherently governmental, closely associated with inherently governmental, or otherwise exempt from private sector performance to mitigate risk, ensure continuity of operations, build internal capacity, meet readiness needs, etc." End quote. Also, according to DoD, quote, "Moreover, on a case-by-case basis at the organizational level, DoD components are finding that they can generate savings or efficiencies through insourcing certain types of services or functions." Regardless of what is said today, this hearing has provided a very valuable service because we now know that of the almost 17,000 in-house positions created in DoD through insourcing in 2010, just 6% were established where the prime contract holder was a small business. Although not the final word, DoD's 6% report is the first set of undisputed facts to be introduced in a debate rife with disinformation and misinformation. Here's a bit of historical context. During 2010, when DoD actually insourced, it spent a record $248 billion on service contracts, a huge increase from the $104 billion spent in 2001. Civilian personnel costs during that same period increased from $41 billion to $69 billion. And a little bit about proportions. I think defense service contractors would have a very difficult time convincing taxpayers they've been victimized by insourcing when there's been such a large net increase in service contracting, a $5 billion net increase in 2010, despite insourcing. Insourcing affected less than 1% of contracted out work at DoD in 2010. As we have seen, insourcing can be used to improve service, save money, and reassert public control over public functions. Federal employees are often far more flexible than contractors because they don't insist on lengthy negotiations and costly surcharges every time something unanticipated occurs. Yet despite significant savings from reducing over-reliance on contractors, DoD insourcing has all but stopped. DoD is no longer managing its workforce based on the usual criteria of cost, policy, risk, and the law. Instead, it's not assigning work to federal employees. Indeed, it's taking away work from federal employees merely because they're federal employees, which inevitably undermines the interests of taxpayers and warfighters. It's also important to understand that the insourcing laws don't cover conversions to performance by military or reserve personnel. This hasn't stopped lawmakers from offering draconian amendments to stop insourcing, even when the so-called horror stories that inspired them actually involved insourcing to military or reserve personnel, not to federal employees. The insourcing laws also have nothing to do with contracts that are terminated simply because the agency no longer needs the work to be performed. I realize that both of those points are obvious, but the vast majority of alleged horror stories we've been presented with are actually contracts that aren't continued or have been converted to performance by military and reserve personnel. At a time of large budget deficits, it's important that contractors, both big and small, be required to make the same sacrifices that rank-and-file federal employees are already making. Proposals to prevent managers from using federal employees instead of contractors, even when money would be saved for taxpayers, are indefensible. Contractors consume enormous amounts of discretionary spending. No effort to reduce the burden of contractors on the taxpayer can be taken seriously if it does not allow managers to substitute federal employees for contractors when savings are possible. This concludes my statement. I'd be happy to answer any questions members of the committee may have.